Danny Higginbotham, he is the match analyst for MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. You're on the call for LAFC and Houston. You know, the Dynamo is really in an unfamiliar place. From your perspective, what do you think the rest of the league thinks about Houston now being in the Final Four?
I think it's been incredible. I think when you look at what they've done early on in this season, but how they've progressed, how they've evolved as a team, and I don't think any other team will look at them and think, oh well, it's surprise they're here. They deserve to be where they are, and I think that's what happens when you get to this point. When you get to the playoffs, you deserve to be in there. And I think you look at a team like Houston; they've just got better and better as the season's gone on. And I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is the collective. It's such a collective. It's not about the individuals. Yes, you have outstanding players like Herrera, who's been phenomenal, but it's still about the collective of this team. And they've just gone from strength to strength as the season's gone on.
Ben Olsen, when he was hired here, there was quite a bit of criticism from the real hardcore Houston fans. Ted Siegel, the owner of the team, told me he took that criticism personally. He looked at it as a personal slight because he knew how good Ben is and could be. How do you feel about that hire? How did you feel about the hire at the time? And was he the missing ingredient in your mind?
I think it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one to tell because when you look at the background of everything, obviously Houston had gone through a bit of a period where things weren't going well. So it was always going to be difficult, whoever you brought in then, to try and pick up the pieces to a certain extent, I'm guessing. But I think in Ben Olsen, the one thing that really stands out to me, and we just spoke to him not so long ago, he's such a vibrant character. He's the type of manager, as a former player, he's the type of manager you speak to and you're like, I would have loved to have played for him. And when you get that as a manager and you have all the players buying in, you start to see a style that they're starting to implement and it coming out as well. That tells you two things. One, you've got a great chance of being successful. But two, most importantly, all the players are buying in. And I think that's what you're starting to see now. You see an identity with this team, and that's a sign of a good team. At times, you'll watch teams that are struggling. It's like you don't know what they're trying to do. But when the game starts for Houston, you see what they're trying to do. You see the ability that they have in their team. And the biggest thing and the biggest compliment that I can give to Ben Olsen will be that they have an identity that is something that you can see very, very early on in a game. And to also add to that, they're also pleasing on the eye to watch. Now, to get both of those things is very, very difficult, but they're in this place at the moment where they've got exactly that.
Ben Olsen told us after the Sporting KC match, the goal for Houston was really to hold the ball, control the ball. Will his group be able to do that against LAFC?
That's what I find really fascinating about this game. I find it incredibly exciting when you look at the two matchups. You look at Houston, they are a team that are obviously going to LAFC, but then you look at the midfield three, the likes of Karaski, you've got Arto, you've got Herrera. The midfield areas where the game could well be won and lost. And I think from Houston's side of things, they're going there as the underdogs. I don't think there's any question about that. LAFC are at home, the onus is on them. But I think one thing we've seen with Houston as the season's evolved is their ability to control games, to control the midfield. So yes, they can go there and do it. I think there'll be parts of the game where they're going to have to hold on, but I think that will be the same for LAFC. But I just feel that whoever wins that midfield area between the two midfield threes, I think goes on to win the game, because then they can dictate the tempo of the game.
Let's dig deeper into that. Fill in the blank. LAFC does what which will cause problems for Houston?
Counters incredibly well and have arguably the most informed goal scorer in MLS in their team, in Bouanga. So I think a lot of the times what you're finding, you could probably say the same about LAFC, is that both teams are actually going to have to be at their most disciplined when they're attacking, because both teams are very, very good in transition. And when you look around the pitch, what excites me even more is that I think there's some really good individual duels to look forward to. You have Dorsey, who has, he's changed the way that this team plays. They now play with more width. He's playing against Bouanga. And Dorsey is a very attack-minded right back. And Bouanga is a very attack-minded left winger, stroke second centre forward that can drive inside. So that's a really interesting matchup. But I just feel, and this is when I talk about whoever gets to win that midfield area, they'll go on to dictate the game. They'll be able to play the way that they want to play. First goal becomes really important because both teams are very good when holding on to a lead. But yeah, you go back to the original question about what Houston has to do to make sure that the LAFC is it's sort of made to play a way that they don't want to play. It would be hold on to the ball well, don't give away unnecessary possession, because we know LAFC, when they counter attack, it's not about 1, 2, 3, 4 passes. It's one pass and you're in on goal. They did exactly that last week with a winner against Seattle. You know, they're defending 1 minute, then the ball's played through to Boanga and he does the rest. So I think it's what you would call rest defending. Be at your most disciplined when you're attacking to make sure that you can't get caught out on the counter.
So on the other side, Houston does what blank, which will cause problems for LAFC. It's just that style of trying to control the ball, hold the ball, or is it? Does it go deeper than that?
I think control the midfield area. And like I say, when I go back to what I said previously about Houston in terms of them being a collective, they don't have one person that they rely on to score goals. Yes, they've got Bassi, they've got Bird, you've got obviously Herrera, who's been magnificent this season, Quinones, but I also think that if you give them the ability to control the midfield, they're going to cause problems for anybody. Some of the goals that they've scored in recent times where they win the ball and then they're just dominating. And what I like about the front six, the way that they play, it's very interchangeable. So it's very difficult to play against. So if you imagine all of a sudden you've got 4 players going through the middle, all of a sudden then there's space in the fullback area for the likes of Dorsey, who loves to get forward. So I think from LAFC's side of things, similar probably to what I would say about Houston, you've got to make sure you protect the ball when you've got it. You don't give the ball away in dangerous areas because you will be punished for it. Because one of the things that you would say about Houston is that, yes, they do miss chances, but the biggest thing is they create chances. And I just think the way that they attack will cause problems for LAFC if LAFC allow them to control the midfield.
Big picture, Houston making it this far so early on in Ben Olsen's tenure here. The Dynamo really doesn't have a quick strike guy or a true sniper, to use like a hockey term. Do they really need one of those to have success long term, or to keep building this momentum, to keep staying this course of being a challenger for the cup each and every season?
I think long term, yes. I think here and now, no, because I look at the players in their team. One of the things you can do, you can either look at someone and say, wow, look at the amount of goals that he's got. But when you look at this Houston team, it's like, okay, if you stop this player, then this player can still do something. And that's why I talk about it being more about the collective, because one of the things you need to do when you're playing against Houston, you need to try and stop Herrera, because he can play as sort of like a deep line playmaker, like a quarterback, where he can dictate from deep. He can be up the other end of the pitch, and he's so difficult to stop. So what you find is a lot of opposition teams, they target Herrera, try to stop him, which is difficult in itself. You can't stop him with one player. So if then you say, okay, we're going to try and stop him with 2 or 3 players, well, have a guess what? That's going to leave other Houston players free. So it's very, very difficult. But yes, long term, I think that's what you want to get. You want to get a goal scorer that can find the back of the net on a consistent basis. But what I would say about a player like Baird, who's playing centre forward at the moment, is that he's such a selfless player. The running that he does, the way that he looks to stretch the opposition, you know, that creates space for Bassi, who potentially at times wants to come in the number 10 position. So the here and now, I think they're in a really, really good place. And, you know, it's going to be a great game at the weekend. And at times I think it's going to be looked at sort of as a chess match, as in terms of, you know, who shows their hand first, the moves that they make. And I think that's what makes it really fascinating.
Which team has the edge in goal?
In goal, oh, that is a big call. I think it's safe to say that last week, Crepeau, I thought he was absolutely magnificent against Seattle. It's great to see him come back from injury. Look what happened to him in MLS Cup last season, where, you know, he got sent off, but he had a horrific injury. To now come back and be at the point where he's at is pretty special. But I would also say Clark as well. I think the understanding that he's got with his defense, I think the way that he's protected by his defense as well, is brilliant to see as well. As a former defender, I love to see the way that teams defend, because I think people don't look at defending as an art, but it is. You know, people always look at the stuff that's pleasing on the eye when you're going forward, but defending is also an art as well. And I think both of these teams have no problems with saying defense first. So it's very difficult to separate the two goalkeepers from that point of view. Both exceptional, and I think both managers are delighted that both of those goalkeepers are in goal.
Danny Higginbotham, match analyst, MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. We'll have the call. LA, Houston, Saturday night, all playoff matches televised live on MLS Season Pass via the Apple TV app or online at tv.apple.com. I think I got that all out on the first try. Danny, thanks for hanging out with me.
My pleasure.